Okay.
Yes, good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning,
Welcome.
all.
Welcome.
Good morning, everybody.
Members, I want to make a few remarks. Well, perhaps let me switch that around and have a discussion quickly about the minutes. We have 3 minutes that we need to confirm. We have put them off to later meetings in an effort to get through some of the substance and to deal with the guests who have been here. And even today we have a tight time because there is a host committee meeting immediately after this, set for 12, and of course the house itself meets at 2. So on the suggestion of one of my members, I am going to put to the members that we convene in a remote online format to just deal with what will then be 4 sets of minutes quickly so that we don't have them backing up on us, and I would hope that we would be able to find some time to do that in the next week, the coming week. So I'm going to ask the committee clerk just to canvass convenient times and dates for that. So I'm going to table those items, both the minutes and the matters arising, until that time. Thank you. I don't ordinarily make very long statements, but today I feel compelled to make a few remarks consequent on some commentary that I heard this morning on a particular radio station while in transit. And I won't call the name of the station or the program or even the journalists who were commenting, but they were discussing a particular political meeting that the opposition party held on the weekend in Barbican. And the remarks they were making surrounded 2 former members of parliament who themselves are now elderly. The remarks, on one hand, appeared to suggest a bit of a reprimand to those who were responsible for carrying those 2 men or responsible for them attending this political meeting and stepping up on the political platform. And on the other hand, the remarks seemed to have been a little dismissive of the men in their elderly state and what appeared to be infirm state. I'm making a point of making a comment about it in this particular committee because the work of this committee is about how we treat with, how we deal with our elders in this society. And it is, I know, the intent of the government to ensure that our elders are able to participate in society as much as they want, to lead productive lives for as long as they are able. And this is not in contradiction to my view that it's also important for society to have churn, for younger members to come up and for the older ones to step back and to allow the younger members to come up, to learn, to thrive, and to take the baton, as it were. But I felt compelled to make the remarks because of the sounds of dismissiveness in the commentary between the 2 journalists that I heard this morning. One comment, politics is something that when you get to the infirm stage, you should stay in the shadows. The last comment was that you must walk into the sunset, you must not shuffle into the sunset. And it was in direct reference to the difficulty both men had. They both had ambulatory difficulties. One had a walker. I felt my stomach knot as I listened to the commentary. as somebody who had a deep, abiding, close friendship with my grandmother, rest her soul, and who has a lot of respect for our elders. And as I was thinking about coming down to this meeting, one of the things I've said to my colleagues is we are not ourselves elderly, and so we always have to remember to seek out the perspective of the elderly. But I felt this morning as I listened, and I'm sure there are going to be those who share the view of those journalists, and I'm making an impassioned plea to my countrymen. Yes, sometimes we do want the younger ones to come up and take over, and the elderly don't always connect very well to what the young are doing. But if we lose respect for our elders, if we remove their dignity, if we treat them as discarded rags, we will lose our soul as a nation. We cannot. Election time it may be, and every political party will decide how they want to maneuver and what the optics are, my side, that side. We will both decide what we want the electorate to see that we think is going to convince people to vote. But let us not, in this very charged season, go down the road of making the kind of comments that remove the dignity, that stokes the fire of disrespect to those who have served this nation, who are themselves now elderly, in any capacity, whichever side they come from. I thank you for your indulgence in me making those comments.
Madam Chair.
Senator Dr. Morris.
President, good morning, colleagues. And I listened to your comments, and without hearing what the broadcasters said, and relying on your observation, I think it is very unfortunate for any such discourse or dialogue that seems to be ageist in their presentations. And as it relates to the instant persons, I am reminded consistently in this committee that there is a relationship, intersectional relationship between age and disability. And none of us is exempt from this developing disabling conditions. Because if you don't get it whilst you're young, 90% of the chance or possibility that you will develop it at some stage, later stage in life because of the aging process. And none of the elderly persons who were on the platform on Sunday night in Barbican are active players in the political process, save and except that they give support to their political parties, of which they have a right to do, because it cannot be that we are going to relegate elderly persons to just come out and vote, and they have no voice, no contribution, but to just go and vote. And so people have to be very careful of any such utterances that seeks to disparage individuals who have served the country on one hand and then retire, but in the process, I won't say infirmed, because that suggests some very, very negative connotations as to the state of well-being of the individuals. But one of the individual I know had a fall recently and broke a leg, and the other person had a spinal injury some time ago, and um, those things happen to anybody.
Senator Dr. Morris, I want to stop you because I really don't want to indulge too much discussion about their health status. I think suffice it to say we sound like we are endorsing the same view, and I felt it necessary to make some comments about it from a national perspective because we are a nation with a growing elderly population. And so young and old, we're going to have to find a way for us all to transition through the various stages in peace and harmony. But I didn't really want to make any sort of statement that was going to expose their situation. So for that reason, I hope you will join me in that.
I say that I had to make an intervention because I thought it was very unfortunate, any such utterances. And I mean, frankly speaking, I wouldn't have brought it here, but I mean, it is here. So, I mean, I had to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morris. Members, there's no document that has been circulated from the Ministry of Local Government. Has it been emailed to the members online? It has been. Okay. Very well. I do want to remind the members online that when they're making an intervention, can they please turn their cameras on? And if you could just raise your hand, we're monitoring the online platform. Just raise your hand so that the clerk can see and acknowledge. You'll be acknowledged at the earliest opportunity. Thank you so much. Without further ado, we have been hearing from a number of the ministries and departments in the government to get a better understanding of the policies that have been implemented and the various programs and initiatives that currently exist that are in planning stages as we consider what are the proposals we are likely to agree should form a part of a law dealing with the elderly. And I'm going to stop saying elderly care and protection because we haven't proposed a name, and I keep saying that as if to say that that's the decided name. So as we had heard briefly from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, and they're going to be coming back to give us a much deeper dive than they were able to give on the last occasion. We heard from Legal Reform, who gave us a very thorough and detailed presentation of the legislative landscape on issues dealing with the elderly. And today, I want to welcome the Permanent Secretary and her team from the Ministry of Local Government. I'm going to ask you, Madam PS, to just introduce yourself and introduce the team. And we welcome you and we thank you very much for coming. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us today. The floor is yours. If you just turn on is it the first button? Right. Okay, and then I would like.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning. Also, good morning to the members in-house and online, and also to our colleagues from the other ministries. I'm not sure everyone is from the same ministry. I see some familiar faces. Good morning to you all. Happy to be with you today for this discussion. With me today are Ms. Trika Lewis. She is the Secretary, Board of Supervision. And for those of us who are wondering what that is all about, it is the entity in the ministry that has responsibility for all the island's infirmaries and golden age homes and treats with homelessness and the vulnerable population as defined under the Poor Relief Act. Also in the house with me today is Mrs. Zonia Foster Forms. She's the Managing Director for the Vineyard Town Golden Age Home that has the largest population of vulnerable persons in the country. I believe over 400 persons are resident in that facility. Yes. Madam Chair, I don't know if you'd like me to go directly into a brief overview based on the letter we received, or if you'd like to say something first.
Well, just to say, Madam PS, your name is Marcia Henry Martin.
Me here the other day and say, oh, it's you. We know you know, man. So I didn't feel I needed to say my name again. I'm sorry. For those who don't know me, I am Marcia Henry Martin, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development. And thank you, Madam.
Very well. Madam PS, please take it in the format you wish to. I will permit my members to interrupt if they need to with some questions. And we will have an orderly way of doing that so we can track the members who are saying it for the purposes of our summaries and recordings after the summaries of the recording after the meeting is over. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so we received the committee's letter. I will confess that we received it at a time that we were closing off business for the financial year, so it was a bit challenging for us. So we really had not had the opportunity to consult with all our local stakeholders to the extent we would have loved to. Nevertheless, the team in-house prepared the documentation that has been circulated based on the information provided. But at the last page where you have recommendation, you'll see that we're proposing to have some further consultations with our stakeholders, which would include the local authorities and our Golden Age homes and other stakeholders with whom we engage on a daily basis to refine the submission that we would like to put forward to the committee. Notwithstanding, we were asked to look at the issues and challenges impacting the elderly population that need to be addressed in any comprehensive legislation, the gaps that exist, whether policy, legislative, or other gaps that require legislative solutions, recommendations for specific provisions that should be included in such legislation. You also asked us to contemplate whether local authorities, as mentioned in the Maintenance Act, refers to municipal corporations, and to outline our knowledge of elderly abuse. And lastly, you asked us to, the committee would like to benefit from information on the types of social protection benefits offered to senior citizens. So Ms. Lewis will take us through the presentation and will be supported by Mrs. Foster Forms as may be necessary given her peculiar experience with the Vineyard Town Golden Age home. And just to indicate that as we explored the question about local authorities, whether that meant municipal corporations, we do concur that the Act itself does not define local authority as a municipal corporation. However, we are guided by other legislation that does define a local authority as a municipal corporation to include the Local Governance Act, the Building Act, and several other pieces of legislation. We did not have the opportunity to go to the interpretation law. Ms. Wilkins, I hope to talk to you yesterday. I didn't get the chance to do so, just to explore it a little bit more. But from what we are understanding from other legislation, local authority in our mind may be accepted as the municipal corporation. And so we have never ever invoked using the Maintenance Act as far as we know, based on several other factors that would have to be considered. But certainly, as Ms. Lewis goes through, she'll tell you that from time to time, we have had to encourage persons that based on the Maintenance Act, that it is in their best interest to ensure that they give support to the elderly that are related to them. With that being said, Chairman, I'm going to hand it directly over to Ms. Lewis for her to commence the presentation in details as presented to the committee this morning. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, and staff of the other ministries. Thank you for this opportunity to be here today to share with you what it is that the Board of Supervision and the Ministry of Local Government has been doing or is mandated to do based on the Poor Relief Act of 1886, which oversees which gave rise to the Board of Supervision to oversee and monitor the delivery of poor relief services administered by the municipal corporations. In addition to the outdoor services that we provide, which I will expand on in detail as I go further, our primary mandate includes the provision of institutional care for destitute individuals who are mainly lacking in family support. While I have the detailed version of the document that was shared with you, I have prepared a summarized version as well, and I'll be going through that in the interest of time. However, we are open to all the questions. The purpose and function of the Board of Supervision, we have 4 main functions. One is supervisory and regulatory, which means that we make rules and we set standards for the uniform delivery of poor relief services. We have an advisory and training role. We provide guidance to the municipal corporations and other entities who may have a similar mandate to us. We conduct operational audits of the poor relief departments, and we train staff, both staff of the infirmaries as well as the outdoor poor relief departments, and now the staff that work in our homeless facilities. Persons who may feel that whatever decision was made at the local level is not, it's not to their liking, or they would like to appeal, the Board of Supervision has that authority to hear appeals from persons who have been refused relief. And finally, we also make rules and for the building and site approvals for new infirmaries, working, of course, with the municipal corporations. Our core programs
Ms.
are...
Ruth, let me interrupt you there, and I just want to be clear for the benefit of those who might be listening to us. The structure of the delivery of poor relief services is solely through the municipal corporations.
That's
is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And so the municipal corporations all have poor relief departments.
Yes, they do.
And those departments are monitored by the Board of Supervision.
That's
correct?
Yes,
and you
madam.
do that through the municipal corporation, or you have direct responsibility oversight of those departments, because those departments are departments of the corporation. How does that work?
Right. So the board has 2 arms. There's the our 9-member board, which is a policy arm, and we have an administrative arm that's staffed by regional managers and support staff. Those regional managers are responsible for assisting in the monitoring of the work of the poor relief departments.
Thank you very much. Senator Gale.
Since you went there, is there a standardized framework that allows for the monitoring across the various municipalities or parishes?
Yes, there is. We have our Poor Relief Act, which sets out the parameters within which we ought to operate. Also, from time to time, the Board of Supervision does make rules, and those rules are then passed on to the municipal corporations. We have our standard operating procedures.
Right.
We have our handbook, and as we go along, based on the challenges and based on the issues that we're seeing, we do craft the standards and the rules.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Gale. Mr. Lewis, you can continue.
Our core functions, as we mentioned, indoor poor relief services, and those are our infirmaries. We provide outdoor assistance, and that's assistance for persons who are living in their homes. However, they need additional support for their own sustenance, helping to meet their basic needs. We have our homelessness management now, and those are the drop-in centers that offer support or offer basic services for persons who are homeless, so food, clothing, That's where some of our health officers as well as the psychiatric nurses aid come in to provide services to the homeless persons. We are also engaging in rehabilitation through our transitional housing. We provide education for children, that includes school supplies, financial support. We have a scholarship program as well that we do, and our indigent housing program, which is the provision of houses for persons who are registered on the poor relief listing. Our infirmary services, we have 12 infirmaries and 2 golden age homes, so that's a total of 14 facilities across Jamaica, currently serving 1,292 residents. Of that total, 1,012 of the residents, approximately 78%, are elderly, 60 years and over. And the services in our infirmaries include healthcare, nutrition, emotional and social support. Our staff are trained in collaboration with NCTVET as well as the Ministry of Health and Wellness. For our emotional well-being and wellness of our residents, we have started to put in therapeutic parks, which gives them a space outside of the walls or the confines of the buildings, and it helps to improve their mental health functioning. It has been proven. And we recently, 3 years ago, have started to provide the services of dietitians and physiotherapists to improve the general care that we offer in our infirmaries. And that is also part of our mandate to assist in active aging. We want our residents to be engaged as much as possible and to improve their mobility while they are in our care and improve the quality of their lives.
Can you just, these infirmaries, can you just describe the state of the residents that would require them to be in an infirmary as opposed to hospitalized, or what's the nature of their lack of mobility or their challenges?
Well, our facility caters for adults. So we start at age 18 right up to as old as possible. Some persons come in with a disability. There are some persons, we do have mentally ill residents in our facilities as well, and mental illness varies from schizophrenia to depression. In terms of mobility, or while our facility provides medical services, it's also a social institution. So persons who we would have assessed in the communities who are not getting the support that they need, and they need assistance with activities of daily living, and they can't provide those for themselves, the infirmaries are for that purpose. So it's a range of different medical conditions and cognitive functioning of persons that we have in our facilities. Our outdoor poor relief services, we support 13,664 registered poor across Jamaica. Of that total, 6,409 persons who are 60 years and older receive assistance from us. Temporary relief is also available in the cases of natural disasters, or they come upon a situation where they need temporary assistance to transition back to normal functioning. Our homelessness program, our last point in time survey was conducted in 2017, and at that time we identified 1,935 homeless persons. Of that total, 522 of those individuals were 60 years and over. In our homeless facilities, as I would have alluded to before, it's a multidisciplinary approach that we take. We look about or try to assist persons with mental illness, drug addiction, family conflict, and those who are fleeing violence. The services in our facilities, again, includes hygiene care, counseling, and transitional support, and we have the night shelters that just offers a respite for persons who need that shelter away from the streets. The challenges that we see impacting the elderly, inadequate family support, and that includes financial support, social support, and emotional support. Based on our poor relief assessments, we have seen the poor conditions that some elderly persons are forced to live in. We do have a high demand for space within our facilities. A recent count of applications or persons that we know are awaiting admission to our facilities is over 600. 600? Yes. That's a recent count.
600 waiting
for admission, island-wide.
So in your facilities, you are at maximum capacity?
All
your
our facilities. All facilities are at maximum capacity.
And how are these facilities spread across the island?
There is one per parish.
One per parish.
That's correct, except Kingston, which has the Vineyard Town Golden Age Home and the Denham Town Golden Age Home.
Okay.
And we partner with some facilities, especially in the homeless aspect, who provide care. We provide some level of support to them.
Senator Gale?
So the fact that you are max to capacity in these institutions or infirmaries, what's the adequacy in terms of manpower to support the capacity? Or is it sufficient enough? Or is there a shortage of staff?
We do not now have a shortage of staff. There was a recent exercise restructuring within the municipal corporations, and that exercise allowed each poor relief department, both indoor and outdoor, to have the requisite number of staff needed to care for the persons in our institutions and on the outdoor road.
So what you'd be suggesting to this committee, therefore, is that because of the numbers of institutions per parish and that long waiting list out there, there's the requirement of a possible expansion of facilities, whether you can expand on what you have or you have additional facilities. That's what you're saying to us?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay.
Chair?
Senator Longmore and then Senator Dr. Morris. One quick question, though, before Senator Longmore comes in. When you talk about one per parish, you're talking about the infirmaries?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Senator Dr. Longmore.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I would like to congratulate our presenter for being thorough in what she's presenting. And I would also like to congratulate the efforts to improve the conditions of persons in these facilities. I had raised my hand initially to ask about the layout of how the facilities are. So having heard it's one per parish, I'm a bit more educated. But in addition to the waiting lists of over 600, we recognize the aging of our population and that demand is likely to increase. My question is, in addition to, and again, I congratulate the holistic approach that I'm hearing. More and more we're recognizing this is not just about mental wellness, but it is also enhancing for one's physical well-being. I wonder about the synergy with especially our justice system and what we would call the legacy issues for persons in those infirmaries. A lot of people at that age, they're contemplating such transition. And we see where our justice system has a backlog of cases related to unplanned transitions, put it that way. I'm wondering if there's any effort or any consideration of incorporating this. And again, with what was mentioned in terms of the lack of family support, what if there's any specific recommendations regarding us improving that level of family support for these individuals? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Longmore. Ms. Lewis, I'm going to let you respond, or and then Senator Dr. Morris after.
In response to Senator Longmore's question, I believe that it is a policy position that we probably have to interrogate a little bit more before we're able to provide a comment on that, but it is a good suggestion for us to look into.
Thank you. Senator Dr. Morris?
Hello? You hearing me, Madam Chair?
Yes, we're hearing you now, Senator Morris.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Madam Chair, the Board of Supervision and the infirmaries, don't like that name, it caters to much more than senior citizens because it involves individuals who have been abandoned and also some individuals with disabilities, but they are not necessarily senior citizens. And what I would want to get from the data that is presenting here is what proportion of the targeted group that the Board of Supervision deals with constitute senior citizens. That is individuals over 60.
Senator Dr. Morris, the document that we got just as the meeting started, and we do apologize for the late delivery of it, there was a little mix-up, suggests that there are 1,012 elderly individuals in the infirmaries across the parishes. Is that correct, Madam PS?
Yes, which is about 78%.
60 and over. 60 and over, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'm happy for that information, Madam Chair, but you can appreciate that I wouldn't have seen that document.
I do, Senator Morris, and that's why I apologize.
Okay. Yeah, man. Thanks for that, because it gives me some clarity.
We're all receiving it at the same time, mind you. Like I said, there was a little mix-up in it getting to us at the Parliament.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Sinclair?
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. All right, well, you know, I'm from St. James, right? And so we have benefited from, pardon me? PS?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We know our interaction.
Yes. Well, we have benefited. I was just informing the committee because the presenter spoke to the improvements in some of the infirmaries. St. James has received improvement, and I suspect that before we even get to the discussion on the expansion across the other 14, well, the other 13 parishes, there would have to be some improvement in what presently exists for accommodation for the persons who are there. But the minister has been doing several improvements across several infirmaries in Jamaica. As I said, St. James was just one of the places that benefited. Importantly, there was an improvement in the male ward, and that is where I will start. Do you have a breakout of the gender that exists within our infirmaries? So you gave us a figure of 1,292 residents, and you have identified 1,012 of them as being, you refer to it, elderly individuals aged 60 and over. And probably that was another quick question I was going to ask is it that we have a legal definition of elderly? Because once you get to 60, I'm just asking because that may be something that we'll have to contemplate in finding what category of persons we're going to be wanting to incorporate in this group. Right? So,
we do, yes. We understand the question.
You understand the question because you see the gray hairs that I have?
No, just yesterday when we were preparing, so I said to Miss Lewis, Why isn't it 65 or
There you
50
go.
or 70? So it is something we were discussing, and that's why when I started, Madam Chair, I was saying that would have loved to have had the opportunity to have a little bit more time to consult in order to give a more detailed response to what we're giving today. So this is just from our internal assessment.
Yes.
Right, but she did
it's-
explain that it's related to the work at MLSS, right? But Ms. Lewis will explain more.
Well, it is, I think it is a critical question for this committee. And beyond your presentation from the Ministry of Local Government, because the committee is looking at a proposal that is to create an elderly, let me be cautious based on what Madam Chair said, legislation that deals with persons who are classified as elderly. And so I think we need to be able to define that group if there is no established definition for it. But the question is, PS and your support team, whether we have a breakout of how many male vis-a-vis how many female exist and are accommodated in our infirmaries. I suspect, based on just my own observation and probably knowledge from one particular parish, that we have more males in the infirmary than we have females. And my question then is, have you conducted any analysis as to why we find that type of situation existing, where it is our males that end up in the infirmaries as against the females? And it may come down to something that you can look at later on, because I see reference where you said gaps that exist in the Maintenance Act, and I have a particular view of it. I think you briefly touched upon it earlier. Now, we have the infirmaries as let me say, from the point of view of government. It's operated by government to provide assistance for persons who are in need. But then there's a growing private sector operation that deals with persons who fall in a similar category in need of care. They are vulnerable and elderly persons. And sometimes you get horror stories coming out of some. You find them popping up in communities that the rest of the community believe that that type of activity should not take place within their community, because it may either be in breach of the covenant, or they may find it as being putting a stigma on the community, for want of a better type of description. Because some of those comments, again, have come to me as a local government practitioner from communities where you find these operations being privately done. But what I'm concerned about is that, and it may assist, because you have private persons who provide elderly care, and it expands the opportunity beyond what government is able to provide at a time. But how much monitoring, how much regulation is being done in respect to these private operations is something that I think that we need to have a serious look at. There was one other thing that I had made a note on, monitoring, yeah. But I will leave it there at the moment, Madam Chair, but I think these are some things that I would want to get some response on. The therapeutic park that you mentioned, yes, that's part of have persons from my division who actually reside at the St. James Infirmary, and I visit them from time to time. Right? They want to see the faces that they may be familiar with. And as I said, it comes back, and I will raise it again when you're incomplete because you had not dealt with the gaps, right?
No.
You're not okay. But the therapeutic park, I believe, is a tremendous add to the infirmary. Because it's a place that, when I sat down in the gazebo at the St. James Infirmary and interacting with the resident, as I said, who was from my division, who unfortunately ended up at the infirmary having regard to the particular circumstances. I mean, I felt so relaxed, and I could see how pleased the person was to be outside of the walls and in an environment that you had a pool with flowing water, and, you know, the sound of water sometimes creates a, yeah. But I think it's a tremendous addition to the improvements that the Ministry of Local Government has made in recent times in some of the infirmaries. NHD, Madam Chair, because we're talking about residence, a residence for needy people, and I think that is where our funding came from in St. James, and it is probably something that you would wish to speak on in respect to how funding can be done for the renovation and possible expansion of a residence for persons who are in need of that type of service.
Just for the sake of the committee, Madam Chair and members, so this is in fact correct in that for the past, I believe, 2 to 3 years, would have received support from the National Housing Trust. The ministry is indeed grateful for that support that allowed us to expand and address several concerns in a number of our infirmaries. I'm sure Ms. Lewis will talk about it some more, but it saw, for example, in St. James, the addition of a new male ward. We would have embarked also on solar water facilities and generators, and we also got support from the National Health Fund for equipment and so forth. And I believe Portland, Westmoreland, trying to remember all the parishes that saw benefited from that partnership. Manchester, St. Elizabeth. So we have had some expansions, notwithstanding the facts remain that we do have 600 on the waiting list. I was hinting to Ms. Lewis that perhaps she could also indicate that whilst we have that waiting list, there's also the provision of the drop-in centers, night shelters, transitional facilities. So although you might not be in the infirmary on a permanent basis, we are continuing to build out some arrangement that will allow some sort of relief.
I believe, who's on there? Senator Longmore.
Thank you, Chair. I could hardly hear there. Just to kind of add on what Senator Sinclair was asking regarding the recognized age for the elderly, I just wanted to ask for sure, in the sense that the UN, WHO, all of those agencies recognize it as 60 years of age. And I know conventionally that's what we do here in Jamaica. Just wondering whether or not that is official, or if we need to actually engage in pursuit of legislation that reflects that. Thank you.
To respond to, to respond to Senator Sinclair in terms of the numbers, we do have our records, our record keeping has the breakdown. However, I do not have that information with me. However, I know for a fact that males do outnumber females. I can only give an uninformed perspective or anecdotal evidence, but no, there is no empirical analysis that was done.
You said the males outnumber the females?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you send that information over to the committee clerk for us later?
Yes, madam.
Thank you so much. Senator Longmore's question, read the 60 versus other age, given the the international community sort of marks it at 60. I think perhaps there may be a play with the fact that our retirement age has been increased to 65. But I don't know that changes where senior citizens are sort of recognized to start at 60, and for what purpose it may change in terms of our various legislative and administrative programs. I don't know if Ms. Wilkins has a view in relation to that. The impact of raising the age of retirement, has that changed in any way across the legislative landscape where we would ordinarily have triggered some benefit or some entitlement at the age of 60?
Thanks, Chair. Well, the increase in the age, though, wasn't island-wide. It wasn't across the board. It was public service. So that would not encompass individuals who work in the private sector. And it didn't result in consequential amendments to other laws either, which is something we will have to look at. I don't think we have a settled age at which we regard an individual as being elderly.
Thank you for that. So members,
Chair,
that's definitely something to consider. Senator Longmore.
yeah, I didn't comment on it, but I'm also very curious about the gender breakdown that Senator Sinclair raised, and definitely room for study there. Might I also just relate that Mother's Day is getting even more popular than Christmas Day? So I suspect that we're seeing the same factors applying in that space with respect to that predominance of males in these facilities, which really does speak to perhaps what we need to do in terms of educating persons about preparedness for this stage of life. Just to throw that in the mix there. Thank you.
Senator Dr. Morris first, and then Senator Gale.
Madam Chair, just a small intervention, because I don't think we need to confuse the two situations here, because, retirement age is different from the marker that is set to classify an individual as a senior citizen. And that is well established based on international norms. But the retirement age can vary. It can vary from 60, 65, 70. Various jurisdictions have different retirement age that they set, but that is different from the age that one is recognized as a senior citizen. So a senior citizen can be productive and at work until they retire. That is simply what the situation is.
Yes, thank you for that intervention, Dr. Morris. Senator Gale.
You see, when you raise the retirement age, it provides an allow for workers to be able to work and continue to contribute in the workplace. I think we have to make the distinction between what defines you as elderly and what are those provisions that this particular legislation that we're pursuing will provide. And just to make the distinction between the retirement age and what constitutes you as being elderly. So we have to consider that. But the proposed legislation, and Chair, you indicated that we have not yet settled on the name for it, yeah? And Ms. Lewis, just excuse us for the level of probity, but this committee, when they get excited, and depending on your presentation, it invites that.
Yes, sir.
Senator Sinclair made mention of monitoring, and part of the regulation that we are pursuing is going to be anchored around compliance in terms of your regulators. So you can monitor by setting up CCTV cameras and so forth. But I'm more about asking on the question of inspection, inspecting your health, your safety, the facilities themselves, how often, how frequent are the in-depth inspections done? And is there a distinction now between what you provide in those areas that you have direct remit in terms of your infirmaries and the facilities, as opposed to the private entities? Because that coverage in terms of inspections must be aligned, whether it's public or private. So how frequent are inspections done, and is there a standard framework as it relates to the level of inspections?
Okay, thank you for that question, sir. In terms of inspections, the Ministry of Health and Wellness provides their public health inspections for our facilities. The Poor Relief Committee of each municipal corporation, that committee also goes to the facilities and do their own inspection, which they come back and take to the broader committee on the conditions, etc., of the facilities. Or regional managers, as part of their duty, is to do spot checks and thorough inspections. We have an inspection tool that we use when we go into the facilities and what it is that we're looking for. Coming out of that, we request or we ask the municipal corporations to remedy any defects that we find, that Ministry of Health finds. Additionally, JFB goes in and does their inspections as well. We do our drills. So in terms of that monitoring, it is quite frequent. Senator Sinclair asked about, and you, Senator Gill, asked about the private nursing homes. The private nursing homes are the remit of the Ministry of Health and Wellness. There's a standards and regulations unit of that ministry that manages or deals with the private nursing homes. The Ministry of Local Government, however, has had instances where we had to intervene or take over some of the persons living in those homes based on circumstances that the homes came upon. That's it.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yes,
Okay.
please continue.
Right. Okay, thank you. Right, so continuing on the issues and the challenges, one of the things that we find also, regardless of the condition that the person may be in, they do not want to be admitted to an infirmary. They want to stay at their homes. And one of the things that we could benefit from is additional community-based personnel who are able to go into the homes and help the persons age in place, help them with their activities of daily living, and keep them comfortable in their own space. Additionally, the physical environment, possibly the need for more elder or senior-friendly infrastructure. In terms of the gaps in the current legislation, we do note the Maintenance Act, as our permanent secretary would have spoken about initially, and our informal intervention in getting compliance for those that we can. Bear in mind also that maintenance also depends on the circumstances of the individual who is asked to maintain the person. And for many of our poor relief clients, poverty is generational. So we find that some persons still don't have the resources to assist as they should.
Ms. Lewis, can I just take you back a little bit to the section on the issues and challenges?
Yes.
And you list here lack of ambulance services to transport the elderly to and from medical facilities. Is that lack of ambulance services in general? I mean, what is particular about ambulance services in relation to the elderly? Do they come equipped with things different from normal ambulances? Is that what you mean?
No, it's just transportation in general. We found from our experience that persons do complain about being able to get to the health facilities in a timely manner. So that information can be adjusted.
From the infirmaries?
No, from the infirmaries, I'm speaking generally, as we do have a cohort who are not in the infirmaries as well.
Okay, okay.
We are equipping our infirmaries with ambulances, just to note as well. And that's presently underway, and that's in partnership with the Chase Fund.
Excellent. And will those, so each infirmary will have an ambulance? How does that work?
That is what we are aiming for.
That's your ultimate goal. That's fantastic.
St. James already has one, as you know.
St. James already has one. What's going on in St. James? I need to go down to St. James. It sounds that way. Okay. And my other question, I'll hold that one for now. Go ahead. Sorry. Continue.
Right. On the issue of elderly abuse, we maintain a zero-tolerance approach towards abuse in any form in our facilities. Any case of suspected abuse is reported to the relevant authorities, and the disciplinary measure for staff of the facilities, if those cases do occur, is with the Local Government Services Commission.
As opposed to the police?
The police are also
a part of the investigation and the reporting process. So do you have an idea of the level of incidents that the facilities might see over time?
At our infirmaries, it's very minimal. We have only had one case that we're aware of in several years at the facilities, and that person was dismissed from work.
Okay, that's good to hear. That's really good to hear. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Finally, to our recommendations, develop a framework to address the poor state of housing for the elderly, possibly to include a dedicated fund for retrofitting elderly homes to ensure they meet modern standards and are equipped with essential amenities, such as proper sanitation facilities and things that enhance their mobility and their safety within their homes. I don't know how practical that is. That is our recommendation, or one of. As we spoke about the transportation needs, that's one of our recommendations for addressing. And I alluded to it earlier as well, the community-based care that is necessary so that persons can be maintained in their home at a standard level. And as PS alluded to or stated, we will consult further with the local authorities to further elaborate.
I certainly know, members, in relation to number 3, increasing capacity of community-based care, but when the Ministry of Health and Wellness comes to have conversations with us, I'm sure they'll be expanding on some programs that they have. I was privy to getting a sort of broad overview of the expansive nature of their programs in the community to help the elderly to function from home and for their healthcare needs to be addressed. So we can look forward to that. Madam PS.
Thank you, Chairman. So at this time, we would have listened to the presentation from Ms. Lewis. So Mrs. Foster formed this was going to briefly, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, being directly involved in running the Vineyard Town Golden Age Home, which, as I indicated earlier, has the largest population of all the facilities island-wide. Just to give us a brief review of her experiences and what she would like to say to the committee.
Before you do that, Senator Morris, you had your hand raised. Not hearing Senator Morris. No, was it raised before then? Okay. All right, go ahead, madam.
Yes, Madam Chair. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Senator Morris.
It's just it takes me to just navigate these devices. I wanted to find out, you see, from Case and the team, because I am aware of cases where you have individuals who are senior citizens and they own property, but they do not have any family support. And sometimes they get into a very difficult situation. And I want to find out if there are any provisions in the law now that would allow the government, for example, to intervene in those situations, giving support to the person, or if they put them in a home, what happens with the property of the individual in those situations.
Okay. Prior to 1973, the vesting of pauper properties was a function of the municipal corporations and the poor relief departments.
Vesting of what kind of properties?
Pauper properties.
Oh, pauper.
Right. That provision, that's the name of it. The Act still speaks to that provision has since been removed from the Poor Relief Act and is no longer practiced. Therefore, your property remains.
What did it allow you to do?
So persons who would be admitted to the facilities, they would vest or give their property to the municipal corporation in return for their care. That is no longer practiced.
Okay. And when was that?
It stopped in 1973.
1973. Senator Gill.
Any reason why it's no longer practiced? Is it that they stopped giving?
I cannot speak to the reason, sir. Maybe it's just the movement of human, I don't know. Honestly, I can't say why it stopped.
It's interesting.
Senator Morrison still? Okay. Okay, thank you. Continue. Yes, Mrs. Foster Forbes.
Chair, members online and in-house, as well as our agencies, members from other agencies. As PS indicated, the Golden Age Home is one of the largest in the Caribbean. We have over 465 residents. And our elderly population, it's over 60%. And the male, what we find that the male is more. Our current, as of March, as of February, we had 166 male as against 109 female. Right, so the male is more. At the home, we try to engage our residents. So we have different programs for them daily. We do have our therapeutic park, and we have different activities to engage them. And that is done on a daily basis. We also try to get them involved in occupational areas that they can learn skills, because they want to be involved. They don't want to be, it's not a place that is there, they're waiting to die. No, we don't allow that. So we have them outside at all times in all kind of external activities. What we find, though, is that you have several of these residents that have children. But when you speak to these children, they will tell you, I don't want to hear about my father or mother don't call me about them, because when I was growing up, he wasn't there for me. So, and that is something that, this is something that we need to change. We need to change the culture in parenting to let parents know that eventually in aging what the values. We also need to change the culture of how our young children see aging. We need to let them know that persons, they have values, they have contribute to nation building. And if, as you're saying, Madam Chair, eventually we never know. This is something there where all of us will get to. It's how it is dealt with. So we need to change the culture. I think that's one of the things that we need to do.
We have spoken before in relation to the Maintenance Act about that very phenomenon with children of persons who were previously neglectful of them, not wishing to support them in their elderly years. It's a real serious thing that we're going to have to confront. I mean, I'm just considering in my mind, you know, can you confront the obligation of a child for their elderly parent without being very vigilant about the obligation of a parent when that child is a child? And certainly, I know there are a lot of parents with children who do not seek the court's intervention for the other parent when that other parent is not meeting the obligations that they ought to meet. And I just wonder if you can fix one without fixing the other. Because perhaps if that were the case, then we could be a lot more vigilant about maintenance orders when those children become adults and have elderly parents to care for. It's something the committee is definitely going to have to grapple with, and we're going to have to probably get a lot more information in relation to those types of matters in the courts. Thank you. Senator Longmore.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. You know, I have to chime in here and actually endorse what our presenter just mentioned. It is really very that critical, and it adds to the general need for us in terms of enhancing values within our family structures. And it is not just going to happen overnight. This is something that affects so many aspects of our society. But I had to underscore it here and emphasize our need to enhance those structures and mechanisms that enable people to be aware of their sense of identity, who they are, the values that they hold, and not just in the context of a single individual, but within the context of family. This is really very critical, and I endorse and fully appreciate what our presenter brought to the floor just now. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Longmore. And this is a good moment to just interject. We had asked our research department here at the Parliament to take a look at the maintenance orders, in particular in relation to elder abuse cases in Jamaica and court reports. And we gave them the period 2015 to 2024. Before I even go any further, I'm going to introduce the research team who's here with us today. But it is remiss of me, and I do want to apologize profusely for not introducing Ms. Tiffany Stewart, our new Senior Legislative Counsel, to the committee. Please forgive me, Ms. Stewart. I beg your pardon.
Thank you for the introduction, committee members. Thank you as well. Looking forward to provide the necessary legal advice and guidance and the technical support, particularly for the drafting of the legislation. I've had approximately 8 years in the field of legislative drafting.
Welcome. We're happy to hear that. We need it. We need it. Thank you. So the research team took a look at this, and there are some members, I think, would have gotten a copy of this. Yes, members will find in their bundle a copy of the statistics coming out of the Chief Justice's annual statistics report on the specialized family courts 2020 to 24. Who is here from the research team? Ms. Hamilton? I understand. Ms. Hamilton, are you? Where is Ms. Hamilton? Okay, I'm so sorry. There we go. Welcome, Ms. Hamilton.
Thank you.
Do you want to just take us briefly through this, because it does tie in very quickly with what we were discussing in relation to maintenance orders for the elderly and the role of the municipal, the local authorities for bringing these matters.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone.
3 minutes, max.
All right, so just to summarize, we went through four different reports, and that's from the Court of Appeal, the Parish Court, Family Court, and the Supreme Court. And we only came up with some information from the Chief Justice's annual statistical report from 2020, 2021, 22, 23, 24. Based on the information presented here, it just gives how many cases were filed in the different courts, how many were disposed of, either cleared by the court, and the percentage rate, how soon or how quickly they go about clearing the number of cases that they've received over the particular years. For the St. James Family Court, from 2020 to 2024, you can see that 410 to 788 cases maintenance cases were filed per year. Of that, 418 to 911 per year were disposed of, and they have given their clearance rate for that court. Manchester Family Court, from 2022 to 2023, we can see maintenance cases filed 378 to 435 per year. 347 to 410 cases per year were disposed of, and the list goes on. The conclusion of our research is that child maintenance orders were the majority of maintenance cases reviewed based on the information provided from the reports received. Spousal maintenance orders, which were mentioned in family courts reports, but with limited specific statistics. There's no specific data on maintenance orders for elderly persons, which was found, and the information reviewed, it does not give any number, or does not give the age of persons who have come before the court, so that we can know who are elders other than who are children and spouses. So that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
P.S., did I interrupt you before? Okay. All right, are we now complete with the presentation? Very well, thank you very much. We do appreciate the information you've shared. I think there are a couple of follow-up questions that we had. Madam Clerk, if you could just reduce those to writing, just as a trigger to the local government team, so that they could just write and respond to those questions for the members.
Indicated, I am hoping the committee gives us an opportunity to consult with our broader stakeholder base at the local level, because we had not done so before coming here today. So we'd like some more time to at least consult with each local authority.
We would be very grateful for that, Madam PS, because ultimately, while we're learning a lot about the broad infrastructure that supports the elderly in Jamaica, our work has to be reduced with all the learning and the information that we get to specific proposals for what a law should contain, the breadth of that law, the scope and the magnitude of that law. So it's going to involve you and your other departments and agencies and ministries. So we would be very grateful if you would engage that consultation and let us have that feedback, whether you want to deliver that to us in writing or you want to come back to have a discussion. We welcome it. Thank you. Members, are there any other questions or comments from my online colleagues? And if they're not, I'm going to propose that we wrap up now because we do have a 12 o'clock House Committee meeting. I want to thank my members. Our committee clerk will be in touch to discuss our minutes meeting, I'll call it that, where we'll deal with the confirmation as well as all matters arising from the outstanding minutes. I don't want it to go any further than this. And then, of course, on the next occasion, is it Health and Wellness you're having? We would welcome the team from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. So I think once we do that and the Ministry of Labor comes back to us, we would have completed the first phase, which is our interrogation of the existing programs in central government, and we can then begin to hear submissions from our citizenry and external groups who we had asked to make submissions. There being, therefore, no other business, members? Very well. There being no other business, might I have a motion that this meeting, what's our next date? Well, no, let me say a date to be fixed. The meeting be adjourned to a date to be fixed. Senator Sinclair? Thank you, Senator Sinclair. Seconded, Senator?
Seconded.
Thank you, Senator Longmore. Our meeting is adjourned.
It must stop. It have to stop. Gang violence is not the solution to our problem. It will only cause pain and suffering. Let's find non-violent ways to solve our conflict. Let's work together to create a safer and peaceful Jamaica. Let's all live good.
A message from the Ministry of National Security.
The following is brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Jamaica is changing right before our very eyes. Across the island, billions are being invested into our road networks, from farm and community roads to major roads and highways. Dozens of communities across the length and breadth of Jamaica are receiving access to reliable potable water for the very first time. And thousands of Jamaicans have become homeowners thanks to the historic shifts in policies of the National Housing Trust, making it easier for Jamaicans to receive funding. Not to mention the record number of houses being built. Never dreamed you would own a home? No matter your circumstance, home ownership is possible for you, thanks to the government's new social housing program specially designed to meet the needs of poor Jamaicans at no cost to them. We are building Jamaica.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Welcome to this week's Breaking Point. Today, we turn our attention to the Discovery Bay Main Road in St. Anne, a roadway that regrettably witnessed fatal crashes in 2024. This makes it the top crash hotspot in this parish. Remember, safety on our roads is a shared responsibility. Please reduce your speed, overtake properly, stay vigilant, and drive defensively as we continue on the path to stay alive in 2025 and beyond. Did you know that in 2024 we identified over 50 crash hotspots in Jamaica? Join the Island Traffic Authority each week as we spotlight notable crash-out spots across the island in our series Breaking Point.